Hey everybody, it's David Gordon from TheaterMania. It is Tuesday, May 26th. Hope everybody had a nice Memorial Day with whatever they chose to do with their weekend. Hi, Lauren Patten.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. Lauren Patten from Jagged Little Pill is here. Jagged Little Pill, fun home. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, all things considered.
Good.
Better than I thought I would have done if somebody had told me these would be the circumstances.
Yeah. You got a cool haircut, I see.
Thank you. Yes, I did. That has been my most recent development, is that I had a friend who could safely cut my hair, and so I said, let's do it.
I was going to ask if you did that yourself or if you had someone to help you.
Oh, no. There is truly no way that I could do anything with this level of skill by myself. If I had cut my own hair, I'd be doing this interview with a paper bag over my head. So.
Yeah, we played that game the first week of the first week of quarantine. I just took it all out.
Yeah.
So you were sick with this.
Yeah.
With what's going around. Tell me about the development of that. I know Derek Klena came on and did this probably a month ago now, and I feel like he was probably one of patient zeros in your company in the Jagged Little Pill cast.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's hard to know now because, of course, we have now learned that it was, in the city earlier than initially thought. So, of course, I think, as probably with many people in New York City, but particularly in close quarters with Broadway casts, a lot of us are now going, I was sick in February, I wonder. Right. And we didn't really know what it was. I just felt horrible, Yeah. So
everybody that thought they had the flu in January and February was like, oh, well.
Wait a second. Right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I did get sick after the shutdown. I kind of had a weird experience with it because I thought I had kind of probably escaped it. I was like, well, everybody in our cast was sharing, the people who are feeling ill, I have symptoms, all these things, and I was like, I feel fine, and so maybe I escaped it, I got lucky or whatever. And I was in Vermont at the time with my boyfriend. He was sick for a little bit, and then I started to get symptoms, and they kind of deteriorated rapidly. Thankfully I'm okay. I was okay. I never had to be hospitalized, but I did start to have difficulty breathing. So I was like, all right, you know what, I'm gonna go see a doctor. So I did, and I got diagnosed with pneumonia. I had pneumonia. So thankfully, I was able to treat it with antibiotics. It was bacterial, and so I started to feel better very quickly. But it was one of those things of thinking, okay, how does a healthy 20-something-year-old get pneumonia with no lung issues if I didn't have another respiratory issue? So I did get an antibodies test a few weeks ago, and it came back positive, so that I was pretty sure that had something to do with it. And
so that answers that.
That answers that. So I had a little topsy-turvy time with it, but I'm thankfully out the other side, and we're very lucky as a cast. Everybody was able to go through it.
Did you have symptoms? I mean, beyond pneumonia, did you have the fever, the loss of senses, anything like that?
Yeah, I didn't have the loss of smell and taste as much. I didn't really notice that, but it's hard because the symptoms for pneumonia are extremely similar to the symptoms for COVID because they're both respiratory issues. So, I had all that fever, chills, extreme fatigue, aches, pains, sinus pressure, all of that, but that's also all very common and for pneumonia. So it's hard to know what was what if I had COVID asymptomatically, if it was all happening at the same time. I mean, no real way to know. All I know is I'm healthy now.
Good. It's so weird to think about.
Yeah.
It's it's just so bizarre, and I have nothing else to say about it.
No, particularly, we were just talking right before this started about, we just had no idea how serious it was. Really.
Right.
I mean, and then the shutdown, I think I've had friends who expected that I kind of knew the shutdown was coming, or we had notice, and it's like, no, we didn't. It was all happening very rapidly. We didn't know. We suspected that probably at some point we were going to have to shut down. We didn't know what it would look like, when it would be coming, anything. So it was just it was unfolding as rapidly as it was for everybody else in our country and for us here in New York and in the Broadway community. And so we had no idea how serious it was at the time. And now you look back and I just look back and I thank God that none of our cast members had to go to the hospital or
Right.
were critically ill or, God forbid something even worse. So it's just
Yeah.
like, I'm so grateful that everybody has recovered at the moment,
Knocking on all sorts of.
knocking on all the wood,
If you have questions for Lauren and you want to pop them in the comments, go ahead. We'll get to them. Jagged had just opened. It was the last opening of 2019. I was there. It was a great night. It was a great party.
It was a great party. It was wild.
You looked amazing. And you guys were just like getting into a groove when all of this happened. Like you were gearing up for like all of the award stuff, which would be happening now. Was there like a mourning period for you when the show shut down?
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to call it mourning. I think it was a shock.
Yeah.
There was something about the momentum of Broadway and of 8 shows a week, and your body is in a rhythm of what that looks like, and then particularly, as you said, gearing up towards an award season for any Broadway show that's new, comes with a lot of outside stuff, press, preparations, thought, all of that stuff, and all the things that our producers were planning for the show. And yeah, so it kind of felt like an emergency brake being pulled on a runaway train because it's a very intense period of time for any actor in a new Broadway show, particularly. So I think there was an adjustment of the shock around that. And sadness with perspective, I mean, I think of course as an actor in a new Broadway show, I wanted to go through the exciting spring season and be in support of our beautiful show that I love and wanted to get all of the recognition and all of the love. And so there was for sure sadness around that, while also recognizing like there's a lot bigger stuff going on right now. And knowing the resiliency of our industry and that we will come back, and that that stuff will be waiting.
I shouldn't say mourning because it's not closed. It's, I know everybody's planning to bring it back right when theaters reopen.
That is, again, knock on all the wood, that is the plan, that is very much the plan and the intention. And I know that our entire company and our producers are very committed to making that happen, which is very lucky as well.
You guys have a very passionate set of producers, I must say.
We do. They're really great. They're very much, I mean, of course, as a producer, you should, if you're investing in all of your time and energy and money into something, believe that you can make money off of something.
Right.
That's part of it for sure. But our producers are very much behind the message of our show and behind what they feel like this show does for audiences. So I think particularly in this time, I think the sentiment of the larger Jagged Little Pill community, cast and crew and producers and everyone, is that we just feel like this is going to be a show that people need when we come back. People are going to need a cathartic show about healing and healing from trauma and about communication and connection with people. So we feel very strongly that it's something that needs to be back and present for audiences.
There is so much catharsis in so many different forms in Jagged Little Pill. I wasn't prepared for the audience response to it, particularly your big song. Were you?
No, absolutely not. No, God. I mean, we started to get an understanding of what it would feel like when we did our out-of-town tryout in Cambridge. And of course, hopefully, when you're in a show and you're developing and you believe in it, hopefully you think it's great. And we certainly did. But you never know until you have an audience. You don't know how people are going to respond to it. And there's plenty of times where you work on something and you really are behind it and you believe in it, and it doesn't translate yet to the audience, So we weren't sure. And, speaking of you ought to know, in that moment, obviously we know that song carries a lot of weight for people and has a lot of emotional attachment and history because it's an iconic song. that is deeply emotional. And so we knew that there would be, hopefully some kind of deep connection to that. But of course, you don't expect the level of reaction that we ended up getting. But then you take the break. So we kind of got a sense in Cambridge when you come back to Broadway, and it's not like you then expect that again.
Right.
I was ready to just say, that was a Cambridge thing, and that was great and really cool. And now we're on Broadway, and it's a different experience, and it
Nope.
turned out to not be.
Do you remember the first night you did that song for an audience in Cambridge, and do you remember how you reacted to like the vociferous response from everybody? Like you as a person?
I feel like I kind of blacked out a little bit. I'm like actually trying to remember that moment. I'm like, nope, not particularly. I mean, I remember very strongly right before doing the song. I was deeply nervous. I was really nervous in a way that I hadn't felt before with that song, because I'd always been in a very supportive room. Alanis was deeply supportive of everything that we were doing, and always really behind what I was doing. And so I had never felt any pressure of like, okay, Lauren, this is a song that you really got to think about how you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And so it was hitting me as I was preparing to do the song for the first time in Cambridge. We had known that a lot of Alanis fans had flown from all over the world to see our first preview, to be in the first audience. No pressure at all. Just people who adore Alanis, have listened to her version of this song for 2 decades, And so for me, all of a sudden, I was feeling that pressure for the first time, because these are people who, rightfully so, are very protective over Alanis's version of it, and I'm doing it very differently. So I remember being extremely nervous, and then I think I just kind of got swept up in the experience, and I think I just kind of blacked out a little bit at that point.
Do you have moments when you finish doing the song every night where you see and hear the people cheering and you're like, yeah, I did that?
I don't know. I mean, it definitely, it's exciting to feel the audience with you in that way, and with you as a performer, with your character, with Jo and where she's at and her story. But I can't really say it ever feels like, like in that, like, because it doesn't feel singular. It doesn't feel like, here's me, I'm not alone on the stage. I have our entire ensemble, and like that shifts the energy deeply when our ensemble comes on stage. And
that ensemble is tremendous.
What? Right? Come
the
on. Truly, everybody is so unique.
The whole show, for people who haven't seen it that are watching this, the whole show are filled with moments like that. Yeah. Where you just want to like scream your bloody head off.
Yeah.
Because of just like the badassery that's happening on stage.
Yeah, we have, I think, one of the most talented casts just across the board. Talented and hardworking, and very singular. I think that you think of an ensemble in like the history of theater, and you sort of think of the like kick line in the back and just everybody blending, and that's how an ensemble served in some shows. And I think that thankfully, in a really cool way, Broadway is moving through to a different way of like wanting the ensemble to be their singular, unique selves, and standing out and bringing their artistry in a way that puts their mark on the stage just as much as anybody, which is really exciting, and I think our show celebrates that.
We have a question from a viewer named Rachel. You are quite incredible. Front row seats, saw your passion and intensity. Are you still practicing? Do you train daily? Like, are you still practicing? Do you like sing through the show every now and then?
I definitely sung through some of my stuff for sure. And I actually, probably like a month ago, I texted Elizabeth Stanley and just said that I was singing through her track in the show because I love all of her songs. So I was like, I just turned on the album and I'm singing through all of your songs, FYI.
It's a great
album. So good. It's so good. I totally, without shame, love listening to our own cast album.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, as far as the show itself, I haven't felt a need to like run my lines or really or like practice choreography or sing the songs in a way that feels connected to like how I do them on stage because it's really we are at a point now in where we are going to need to rehearse prior to going back on a stage for
Yeah,
safety, for nothing else. So I
right.
know that we will have that time to do so, and I'd rather do it with my company, you know, and with my cast rather than like in a vacuum get into some weird pattern of saying lines by myself. Um, but for me, I think what's important is I've been trying to sing really frequently, keeping because you know, your voice is a muscle and it's something that needs to be strengthened and kept in shape. And so I've been trying to sing and trying to exercise and keep my body strong because that is another thing the show is very physical. So
Yeah,
trying so that I won't, you know, be on my butt when
right.
we're going back in rehearsal, like not able to do you want to know again.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I definitely am trying to maintain my physical instruments so that I feel able to step back in when the time comes. Yeah.
Just want to mention that your new haircut is badass, so you should know.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I probably have been like touching it a lot during this because it's very new and so I'm not used to like having this bang swoop. I don't know. It's all new.
Can you discuss the evolution of Joe as a character?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been really lucky that I got to be with this character in this production from the first reading, which is pretty rare to get to take it from the first reading all the way through to Broadway. And when we did that first reading, the script was very much in flux. It was Diablo's very first draft,
Mhm.
so a lot is very different from that first reading. Every character is different, what they're
Sure.
going through, what you know. In some cases like personality it's very interesting, and so when we came in with that first reading things were kind of very malleable and it was a period of exploration, and so to go from that into the workshop into Cambridge I was able to you know work very closely thankfully with Diane our director and Diablo the writer, and um, I think that you know there's a lot of parallels. I'm not like Joe in many ways, and I'm very much like Joe in other ways, in which I was a newly queer understanding of myself, you know, queer person, as I started to develop this character who is a teenager who is exploring her queerness and her queer identity, and so a lot of like my experiences of what that means, that kind of um, the uncertainty, the confusion, the
Yeah.
fear, the elation of that, all of that, you know, is very much was stuff I was going through as time went on. And so I think that the journey was really honing that, being really clear from Cambridge into Broadway. Of course, that's the whole purpose of the out of time tryout for every character. It was like, okay, here's what we're seeing in the room. Now that we have audience feedback, how do we make this clear, concise? How do we, what part of this journey are we telling? I think that's really, you know, the show takes place in a year, right? And so
Right.
for every character, I remember all those conversations about every single character. Like, what is this year in the life of this person, and there's going to be the life after. Like I know that that's really present with Mary Jane and Frankie, you know, two of the main characters of the show, of like their relationship is not at a resolution point by the end of the show, but you feel
Yeah.
like something forward is going to happen, and I feel like that with Joe as well. Joe has opened up in a new way, found more of how she wants to express herself, and there's going to be more as it goes forward, you know, past the life of the show, and I think that's really cool and interesting with this particular project.
This is a question that you hit on a little bit before. JLP as well as Lauren's performance have made such an impact in my life as a queer performer. How does it feel to portray such an important role as a queer woman?
Yeah, it's an honor. You know, it's certainly like um, part of why I feel it's important to tell you know, like why I've devoted my life to telling stories, I should
Right.
say, because I really feel like this way of storytelling in a room with other people, which we will be able to do at some point again, and you know, like that magical experience of being in this room together, experiencing it, telling a story as authentically and as honestly as possible, allows people to be seen in ways that I don't think you are able to see yourself.
Mhm.
Um, in the same way that when you're in a room with another flesh and blood person, and that's happened for me as a young woman, as a young queer person, being in theater, working in theater. That was a lot of my fun home experience, was sort of parallel for me, of like as if I was watching it as an audience member.
That's
Um, yeah, yeah, and so I think that I really understand and I respect that deeply, and know that it's vital for people, and that it can be life-saving and life-changing to be able to see yourself in a way on stage that you've not been able to see prior. Um, so yeah, it's deeply meaningful to me to be able to stand on stage, as a queer woman, and help other queer people feel seen in a different way. Yeah.
What was the fun home experience like for you? Because you were the understudy for Middle Allison.
Yeah, so I understudied Minnie Mouse and Joan, and I I did watch the show a lot. I mean, I probably watched it far past needing to. So I was like, I knew my parts, but I just kept wanting to watch it, and I think uh I mean, there were many experiences of growth for me as a professional and as a performer, because I was watching what it was essentially a masterclass in acting and in directing, when getting to watch Sam Gold work. Um, and Yeah, but I think that also, a lot of people with Fun Home were seen in a different way, particularly lesbian women, because there had never been a lesbian protagonist on Broadway before. That was the first time in
Which is
2015.
crazy to think about. Uh,
Hmm.
13, 14, 15, that
Yeah,
time period.
yeah, yeah. I know that at that point there had been plenty of gay men protagonists, but not
Right.
lesbian women. There was just much less representation in that area, and so yeah, and I knew a lot of people felt seen, and then for me, I had never been in a position where I had gotten to be a part of a community of a more diverse queerness rather than just gay men,
Totally.
and uh, that was a big part of seeing myself, of like, how do I feel so akin and so much so seen, so part of this community, and it helped me to examine that for myself, and then eventually be able to understand my queerness through that. So a lot of what I think audiences experienced with Fun Home, I experienced being part of it. Um, and so I know firsthand the power of theater in being able to see yourself more clearly, because obviously it was part of who I was. I just hadn't been able to see it really.
And then at some point during this timeline, you went and did a really cool play called The Wolves,
Yes, yes, yes.
which is
I
still one of my all-time contemporary favorites. Uh,
Oh yeah.
it's a
It's an incredible play.
incredible play, and I want people to like go buy the script and just read it, even though it won't have the same effect as seeing it live, but it will. Like it'll have a different cool effect.
Mhm. Well, I think there's something about, because I remember when I first read the play, and
Yeah,
there is something that you well, yes, it's not the same experience as seeing it, and I would love to see it at some point because I've never
yeah,
seen a production. Well, I mean, I did see the production at Lincoln Center.
yeah.
That's not totally true, but I'd love to see a different production, one that I didn't know so intimately.
Right.
But yeah, I there is something I remember first reading it. You recognize, you see what it's doing and how special what it's doing is while you're reading it, because you just never see a play laid out that way. For anybody who doesn't know it, there's several points in the script in which there's two conversations happening at the same time the whole time,
Yeah.
and you see how it's operating in a way, and what it's revealing about these women and these teenagers, that yeah, that just so many plays don't have the guts to go there with it. It's a truly incredible play.
That play is incredible. I love that play.
Me too.
Production was so good too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we had Lila Neugebauer, who's an absolutely incredible director, and a very supportive theatrical company with Playwrights Realm that
Yeah.
made it happen for us.
We have one more question here that I
Yeah.
think is going to be a good question to end on.
Mm,
Yeah. Any advice for performers for letting their own authenticity shine through?
yeah. I mean, I wish that there was like a key to just say like, "Oh, do this," and then you'll never feel insecurity again.
Right.
Because I think that's really like what gets in the way of that is our fear, right? And that's so human, and fear is usually what gets in the way of most things. You know, that's what being a human being is. So I feel like for me, I was very scared for a while of what my if I had a place in musical theater as somebody who doesn't have a traditional voice, as somebody who doesn't fit the ingenue role frequently. I there was a period of time where I was like, I'm not going to do musicals anymore. I feel horrible after every audition. I'm just going to do plays, which is of course when I started doing more musicals after I made that declaration of
Of
myself.
course.
So the best laid plans, but so I think that uh, letting your own authenticity coming through is some deeper self work. It was in my case of being finding true acceptance of the fact that I might not fit everything. I'm not going to fit every role. I'm not going to be the right person for anything that comes along, but I will be the right person for the things that are right for me. And I think it comes with a level of acceptance of self and confidence that the thing that is right for you will be there, you know, and it's not going to be every single project you go in for, and that doesn't mean that you're wrong. Yeah, it's kind of confronting that fear, I think. Um, yeah, so it's okay to not fit every mold. It's not really possible to.
Totally.
Yeah.
Lauren, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Really
So
appreciate
good to
it.
see you.
Yeah, you too. We are back tomorrow at 2 with Bess Wool, the playwright of Grand Horizons and Small Mouth Sounds.
Ooh, I'm gonna watch that.
And have a good afternoon.
You
Thank you
too.
so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.